Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay, good. So, welcome.
So, willkommen.
Let's open with prayer.
Lasst uns mit Gebet anfangen.
Father, thank you so much that we can gather together again.
Lieber himmlischer Vater, ich danke dir, dass wir hier wieder zusammenkommen können.
And thank you that you are a Father who is righteous and has a word also which is good for us.
Ich danke, dass du unser Vater bist, der gerecht bist und dass du das Wort hast, was gut für uns ist.
And I pray that you will lead our brother Lawrence, that he can share the word which is on this day in a proper way for us.
Und ich bitte, dass du unser Bruder Lorenz das Wort gibst für heute und dass er das auf den richtigen Art wiedergeben kann.
And I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Und ich bete in Jesu Namen. Amen.
Amen. Okay. So I posted the notes again. They are updated version from yesterday evening.
Ich habe die Notizen wieder gepostet und die sind von gestern ein bisschen erweitert worden.
Okay. And we will continue with Ezekiel 1.
Wir werden fortsetzen mit Ezekiel 1.
And so far we looked at this illustration here, how Ezekiel obtains this revelation.
Soweit haben wir angeschaut, diese Darstellung hier, wie Ezekiel diese Offenbarung erhält.
And how the 4 cherubims come to him,
Und wie die 4 Cherubime zu ihm kommen.
which is the church in heaven coming to the church militant on earth.
Was die Gemeinde im Himmel zu den Kämpfen der Gemeinde auf Erden darstellt.
Okay. And once he obtained the revelation and assembled in the dust,
Und nachdem er die Offenbarung erhalten hat und ist im Staub gedemütigt
and eats this flying roll, this little book,
und er diese fliegende Rolle ist, diese kleine Buchlein,
then he is sent to then he becomes the church in heaven,
dann er wird Gemeinde im Himmel jetzt,
spiritually spoken. Okay.
geistlich gesehen.
And he can go now to the church militant, to this lost sheep. Yeah.
Und er kann zu den Kämpfen der Gemeinde, also die verlorenen Schafen in diese Zeit jetzt gehen.
Okay. And then the same procedure applies to them. He gives now them the revelation.
Und dieselbe Reihenfolge oder dieselbe Folge eben, er gibt sie die Offenbarung.
And when they obtain it, they become also the church, a part of the church in heaven.
Wenn sie diese eins erhalten haben, dann werden sie auch ein Teil der siegreichen Gemeinde im Himmel.
Then they can go forward to the church militant.
Und dann können sie dann gemeinsam zu den Kämpfen der Gemeinde gehen.
Okay, so let's go now to the notes.
So gehen wir zu den Notizen.
And we did the first 6 pages,
Wir haben die ersten 6 Seiten bereits
but
behandelt.
jump down to page number 4.
Aber gehen wir zur Seite 4 hinab.
And under the heading Final Overthrow of All Earthly Dominion.
So unter den Überschrift der letzte Umsturz von alle irdische
Herrschaft.
Herrschaften.
And this is Ezekiel 1:15.
Und das fängt mit Ezekiel 1, Vers 15 an.
And let's read verses 15 to 16 again.
Verse 15 und 16.
It says, Now as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with his 4 faces. The appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the colour of a beryl, and they 4 had one likeness, and their appearance and their work was, it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. Okay, so here he saw these wheels within the wheels, yes?
Hier hat diesen Rädern im Rädern gesehen.
And we read then this quote here.
Und wir haben diesen Zitat hier nachgelesen.
So jump down to the 4th paragraph,
Zu dem 4. Absatz hinab.
to the underlined.
Der unterstrichene Teil.
It says, The wheels were so complicated in arrangement that at first sight they appeared to be in confusion, but they moved in perfect harmony. Heavenly beings, sustained and guided by the hand beneath the wings of the cherubim, were impelling these wheels. So we could see that the cherubims were the ones that impelled the wheels. Yes?
Wir konnten sehen, dass die Cherubime waren diejenigen, die die Räder antrieben.
Okay. And then it says, above them, upon the sapphire stone, was the Eternal One, and round about the throne a rainbow, the emblem of divine mercy. Next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
As the wheel-like complication were under the guidance of the hand beneath the wings of the cherubim, so the complicated play of human events is under divine control. Amidst the strife and tumult of nations, he that sitteth above the cherubim still guides the affairs of the earth. Okay, so we could see here that therefore the cherubims were directly linked with the complicated play of human events. Yes?
Hier konnten wir sehen, dass die Cherubime in direkten Zusammenhang mit dieser komplizierten Anspielung oder Ausspielung von menschlichen Ereignissen waren.
And it was a little bit earlier in the paragraph she spoke about setting up kings and taking kings down. Yes?
Vorhin in dem Zitat hat sie davon gesprochen, über Könige auf- und absetzen.
Okay, so this is also like Daniel, this is what he saw in the vision, how God is now in control of all the nations.
Und das ist wie in der Vision von Daniel. Er hat gesehen, wie Gott in Kontrolle über alle Nationen sitzt.
Okay. And this, then we looked at that when once you obtain this revelation and you become the church in heaven.
Und das haben wir angeschaut, wenn du die Offenbarung erhältst und die Gemeinde im Himmel wirst.
What do you obtain then also?
Was erhältst du auch noch?
A wheel, right?
Also du erhältst auch ein Rad.
Okay, so now you're like the four living creatures, because what they are, you become here in spiritually spoken. Okay.
So, wie die vier lebendigen Wesen, wie sie sind, wirst du hier so werden, geistlich gesprochen.
So you now impel these wheels. Okay.
Also du treibst jetzt diesen Rädern an.
And we saw this is because Ezekiel, once he was humbled in the dust, he was to eat this roll. Yes?
Hesekiel, nachdem er im Staub gedemütigt wurde, sollte diesen Schriftrolle essen.
Okay, in the roll, if you jump over Psalms 83.
Und die Rolle, wenn wir in die Notizen unter den Zitat kommt, Psalm 83, gehen wir darüber.
And let's go to this quote with the heading, the little book in the Father's hand.
Der nächsten Zitat danach mit der Überschrift, dem kleinen Buch im Hand des Vaters.
And let's go to the second paragraph.
Und das zweite Absatz.
Because here she speaks about the little book in the Father's hand that was sealed with 7 seals. Yes?
Hier spricht sie über das Buch im Hand des Vaters, die mit 7 Siegeln versiegelt war.
It says, there in his open hand lay the book, the roll of the history of God's providences, the prophetic history of nations and the church. So this book was a roll, she says, yes?
Also dieses Buch war gleich eine Schriftrolle.
Okay, and it's the prophetic history of nations and the church.
Prophetische Geschichte von den Nationen und aber auch die Gemeinde.
Herein was contained the divine utterances, his authority, his commandments, his laws, the whole symbolic counsel of the eternal, and the history of all ruling powers in the nations. In some symbolic language, in what kind of language?
Was für Sprache?
Symbolic language.
Symbolische Sprache.
Was contained in that roll the influence of every nation, tongue and people from the beginning of Earth's history to its close. Next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
This roll was written within and without. John says, I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. The vision as presented to John made its impression upon his mind. The destiny of every nation was contained in that book. Okay, so what was in the book?
So was war in dem Buch?
Yeah, the destiny of every nation.
Das
Yes?
Schicksal an jedes Nation.
So once you eat this book, what is now in your mouth?
So wenn du diesen Buch isst, was ist dann in deinem Mund?
The destiny of every nation. Right?
Schicksal von jeder Nation.
Okay, and we read a quote. If you accept the message of the church, then you will be approved, but if you reject it, you will be condemned. Yes?
Also wir haben ein Zitat gelesen, dass wenn du die Botschaft von der Gemeinde annimmst, did you say reproved?
You're approved.
You are approved.
Approved.
Ach, approved, sorry.
Yes.
Dann bist du befürwortet und wenn nicht, dann wirst du
Condemned.
verdammt. Dann,
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. And she spoke about the living church.
Und sie sprach hier über den lebendigen Gemeinde.
Because these 4 living creatures, they were living creatures.
Diese
Right?
4 lebendige Wesen, diese 4 Tiere waren lebendige Wesen.
And they came out of the midst of the fire. Yes?
Sie kamen aus den Mitten des Feuers heraus.
Just like Daniel's companions, they come out of the midst of the fire. And they are now living creatures here. Yes?
Genauso wie Daniel, seine Gefährten kommen aus den Mitten des Feuers hier heraus und hier lebendige Wesen werden.
Okay. And now you basically control the setting up of kings and taking down of kings. Yes?
Und jetzt kontrollierst du das Aufsetzen und Absetzen von Königen.
Because like Joseph or Daniel, you stand now before the king
Denn wie Josef oder Daniel stehst du hier vor dem König
and you tell him what is about to come to pass.
und du
Yes?
erklärst ihm Sachen, die in Kürze geschehen werden.
So whether the king accepts it or rejects it, he gets blessed or cursed here.
Und
Right?
je nachdem, ob der König das annimmt oder verwirft, wird er hier gesegnet oder verflucht.
Okay. So now go up again to Psalms 83.
So, wir gehen die Notizen wieder hinauf zu Psalm 83
In Psalms 83, verse 2,
und in Vers 2
it says, For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. Yes? So they lift up the head.
erheben das Haupt.
Now verse 5.
Vers 5.
For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes. Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assur also is joined with them. They have holpen the children of Lot. So how many nations are confederate here against God's people?
Bis Vers 8. Also wie viele Nationen sind hier vereint gegen Gottes Volk?
10, right?
10.
And they lift up the head.
Und sie erheben das Haupt.
Okay, so in the 10 nations in the papacy, what do they illustrate?
Und die 10 Nationen und der Papst, was stellen sie dar?
Yes, this final kingdom, right?
Diese finale Kaiserreich oder Königreich.
Okay, the statue, right?
Diese Statue.
But then, let's continue in verse 9.
Aber lass uns fortsetzen, Vers 9.
Do unto them, to the 10 kings in the papacy,
So, tu diejenigen an, also die 10 Könige und der Papst tun.
do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kizon. That's the story of Gideon. Okay?
Also das in Vers 9 spricht über die Geschichte von Gideon.
So basically bring the same judgment upon them as Gideon brought upon them in his time.
So, bringe derselbe Gericht über sie, wie Gideon über sie brachte zu seiner Zeit.
Which perished at Endor, they became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yea, all their princes as Zeba and as Zalmunna, who said, Let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind. So God should make them how?
Bis Vers 13. Also Gott soll sie wie machen?
Like a wheel.
Wie
Okay.
ein Rad.
As the stubble before the wind.
Wie der Stoppel,
Spreu.
Stoppel oder Spreu
Ja.
vor dem Wind.
Okay, so, and this reminds you of which other illustration?
Und das erinnert dich an welche weitere
Ja.
Darstellung?
Daniel's statue, right?
Also der Statue von
And
Daniel.
when it gets destroyed, it's like a stubble or the chaff in the wind.
Also
Okay,
wenn es zerstört wird, ist es wie diese Spreu vor dem Wind.
okay. So, yeah, the wheels are therefore the complicated play of human events.
Also diese Räder sind die komplizierte Anspielung von menschlichen Ereignissen.
What takes place among the 10 kings when they are confederate. Okay,
Das, was stattfindet unter den 10 Königen, wenn sie vereint sind.
okay.
That would be the lines coming together, all these different things, is the complicated play.
Yeah, I mean, the lines depict what happens on earth, right?
Also die Linien, die zeigen, was auf Erden stattfindet.
And that's these 4 beasts illustrated there.
Und das sind diese 4 Tiere, die auf die Linie dargestellt
Ja.
sind.
Yes, I mean,
I
for
mean,
beasts.
Because you're saying, oh God, oh my God, make them like a wheel as a stubble in the wind, because those 4 beasts, they're going to become stubble in the wind, so
Yeah, the 4 beasts of Daniel 7, you mean?
yes,
Yes.
and the wheel is the complicated play, so the complicated play is the Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece and Rome, and at
Yes.
the end they're going to become stubble.
Exactly.
Also diese komplizierte Anspielung ist Daniel, Medo-Persien, Griechenland und Rom und am Ende werden sie wie Spreu werden. Deswegen sagt er, macht sie wie ein Rad.
Anspielung ist besser Zusammenspiel. Das ist kompliziert.
Komplizierte Zusammenspiel
Yes.
von menschlichen Ereignissen.
Okay, so now, so therefore when the cherubims, they have these wheels with them, yeah, they control what is going on the earth.
So,
Okay.
diese Cherubime, wenn sie diesen Rädern haben, dann kontrollieren sie, was auf die Erde stattfindet.
Okay. Now let's go and let's continue. That's basically was a short summary of what we did so far.
So, das war eine kurze Zusammenfassung, das, was wir bereits behandelt haben.
Now let's go to Ezekiel 1 verse 17 on the next page.
Auf der nächsten Seite gehen wir zu Ezekiel 1 und Vers 17.
It says, when they went up upon their 4 sides, and they turned not when they went. Okay. Maybe let's go also in our Bibles.
So gehen wir auch in unserer Bibel.
Let's go to Ezekiel 10, because Ezekiel 10 is a parallel chapter to Ezekiel 1.
Gehen wir zu Ezekiel 10. Und das ist ein Parallelkapitel zu Ezekiel 1.
Because how many faces did the cherubims have?
Denn wie viele Gesichter hatten die Cherubim?
Each cherub had 4 faces, right?
Die hatten jeweils 4.
Okay. So, this is what we can read in verse 14.
Und das können wir in Vers 14 lesen.
It says, and everyone had 4 faces. The first face was as the face of a cherub, and the second face was the face of a man, and the third face of a lion, and the fourth face of an eagle. Okay. So, and yeah, we compared it many times with Ezekiel chapter 1. Yes?
Und wir haben das öfters verglichen mit Ezekiel 1.
So just keep your finger here in Ezekiel 10.
So, haltet den Platz hier in Ezekiel 10.
It's compared with the faces in Ezekiel 1.
Und wir vergleichen es mit den Gesichtern in Ezekiel 1.
Ezekiel 1 verse 10.
Ezekiel 1 und Vers 10.
It says, as for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side. And they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side. They 4 also had the face of an eagle. So here you had man, lion, ox, eagle.
So, hier hast du Mensch, Löwe, Ochse und Adler.
But in Ezekiel 10 you have,
Aber in Ezekiel 10
Cherubs, that is.
you have all the same faces except the ox is replaced by a cherub.
du
Yes?
hast alle gleiche Gesichter, nur das Ochs ist hier dargestellt als Cherub.
Okay. But when you go back to chapter 10,
Aber zurück zur Kapitel 10
in verse 22,
und Vers 22.
it says, and the likeness of their faces was the same faces which I saw by the river of Sheba. Their appearances in themselves, they went everyone straight forward. So what is Ezekiel saying?
So, was sagt dann Vers 22?
The cherub is the ox.
Yeah.
Yes.
Der Cherub ist der Ochs.
Okay, so he says the same faces, but
Yes.
literally was not the same faces, but the Bible wants to show us the cherub and the oxen is exchangeable.
So, er sagt, es waren dieselbe Gesichter, aber wir können lesen, das waren nicht dieselbe Gesichter, aber die Bibel möchte uns zeigen, dass der Ochs und der Cherub austauschbar sind
Okay,
oder dasselbe sind.
alright, so now let's go to verse 9.
Gehen wir zu Vers 9.
But those 4 wheels not be the 4 winds, though.
Yes.
Because the winds, it says, as the represent when the nations are all at strife. They're holding controlling those.
Diese 4 Räder sind gleich die 4 Winde, denn die Winde stellen, wenn die Nationen Zank und Streif untereinander haben. Und diese Engel, die halten diesen Winde oder diese Nation in dem Fall zurück.
So one wheel would be in the direction of north, one in the direction of south, east and west, etc.
So die jeweiligen Räder, der eine in Richtung Norden, der andere Süden, Osten und Westen und so weiter.
Yes. And the four, we read it also yesterday in Revelation 7, right?
Wir haben das gestern in Offenbarung 7 bereits gelesen.
Okay, and then just keep your finger here, let's go there quickly.
Also den Platz hier und geht zur Offenbarung 7.
In verse 1.
Vers 1.
It says, "And after these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree." So here, how many angels do we have?
So, wie viele Engel gibt es hier?
Four,
Vier.
right? And they hold
Und sie halten
the four winds,
die
right?
4 Winden.
They stand on the four corners of the earth.
Sie
Okay?
stehen auf den 4 Ecken der Erde.
Okay, so, and when can you hold the winds?
Und wann kannst du die Winde halten?
Because what are winds in this context here?
Und in diesem Zusammenhang, was sind die Winde?
I mean, when the winds are loosed, who's loosed?
So, wenn die Winde losgelassen werden, wer ist losgelassen?
Satan, right?
Satan.
So north, south, east and west, it's all Satan's agents here on earth, right?
Norden, Süden, Osten und Westen sind alle Satans Agenten hier auf der Erde.
Okay, when alone can you control Satan?
Und wann nur kannst du Satan kontrollieren?
After, yeah.
When you have the victory.
Yeah, when you overcame, right?
Wenn du überwunden hast.
So when you can ride the ass.
Wenn du den Esel reiten kannst.
Second verse 6, like illustration, because Joseph's in the chariot and you have these 4 chariots and they're holding those 4 winds.
Yes.
So, I missed a bit with Joseph.
And Joseph is in the chariot when he overcame.
Ach so, also Josef ist in diesen Streitwagen, wenn er überwunden hat. Und dann gibt es diese Darstellung von den 4 Streitwagen, den Himmelsrichtungen nach.
Yes. Okay, so and therefore it shows the 4 cherubims are the ones that control the wheels, that control the complicated play of human events. Right?
Also die 4 Cherubime kontrollieren die Räder, die kontrollieren die Zusammenspiel von menschlichen Ereignissen.
And we saw the 10 kings and the papacy, they are this wheel, okay?
Und wir haben gesehen, die 10 Könige und der Papst sind diesen Rad,
And they're these satanic agencies.
diese
Okay?
satanische Agenten.
Yes. And it's only those that overcame that can control.
Und
Okay.
es sind nur diejenigen, die überwunden haben, die kontrollieren können.
So they're the church in heaven, they overcame.
Sie sind die Gemeinde im Himmel, sie haben bereits überwunden.
Yes. And when you come here, you know the church in heaven, you overcame.
Und
Okay?
wenn du hier ankommst, bist du der Gemeinde im Himmel, weil du eben überwunden hast.
And what did we read this morning?
Was haben wir heute Morgen bereits
What was
gelesen?
given to Peter here?
Was ist Petrus hier gegeben?
The keys.
The keys.
Der
Right?
Schlüssel oder Schlüssel.
And he said, "What you shall bind on
Und was du auf,
earth, it shall be bound in heaven."
was du
Yes.
auf Erden binden wirst, wird es auch im Himmel
And
gebunden.
what you shall loose on earth shall be.
Und was du auch auf
Loose
Erden
in
lösen
heaven.
wirst, wird es auch im Himmel gelöst
Okay.
werden.
So that's just another illustration. When you become here, this church in heaven, you become a cherub. Yes.
Es ist nur eine weitere Darstellung, dass wenn du hier der Gemeinde im Himmel geworden bist, du wirst ein Cherub sein.
Yeah. And you know, standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding these winds.
Und du
Okay.
stehst jetzt sinnbildlich auf die 4 Ecken der Erde und hältst diese 4 Winde zu.
And what is the key, and what is the power that holds or loses?
Und was ist die Schlüssel? Was ist die Macht, der hält oder löst?
Yeah, the word. Right?
Also
I see.
das Wort.
Because when you go to Revelation chapter 9,
Und wenn wir zur Offenbarung Kapitel 9 gehen,
verse 13 and 14,
die Verse 13 und 14.
and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice. What did he hear?
Was hörte er? Vers 13.
A voice.
Eine Stimme.
From the 4 horns of the golden altar, which is before God. So whose voice is it?
So, wessen Stimme ist das?
Christ's voice, right?
Christus, seine Stimme.
Yes. Because in Revelation 8, he's standing before this altar, right?
Er steht vor diesem Altar.
So it's the word, right?
Das ist das Wort.
Saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. So it's the word that looses and binds.
Das
Okay?
ist das Wort, die löst und bindet.
Because the word says, verse 15,
Weil Vers 15 das Wort sagt,
and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. So the word gives them permission to be loosed for this time period, but then they are bound again. Okay?
das Wort gibt sie die Erlaubnis für diese Zeitperiode hier gelöst zu werden, aber danach werden sie wieder gebunden sein.
Okay. Alright, so now let's go back to Ezekiel chapter 10.
Kommen wir zurück zu Ezekiel, Kapitel 10.
And let's now read verses 9 to 12.
Okay.
9 to 11.
Wir lesen die Versen 9 bis 11.
It says, and when I looked, behold the four wheels by the cherubims, one wheel by one cherub, and another wheel by another cherub, and the appearance of the wheels was as the color of a beryl stone. And as for their appearances, they four had one likeness, as if a wheel had been in the midst of a wheel. When they went upon their four sides. They turned not as they went, but to the place whither the head looked, they followed it. They turned not as they went. Okay, so what did they not do?
So was taten sie nicht?
They turned not, right?
Wenden sich oder drehen sich nicht.
So they had these four faces, right?
Die haben diese 4 Gesichter
Okay, and then they just went like this,
und sie gingen eben so.
or they went like this,
Oder so.
okay, or like this,
Oder
or
eben so.
like this. Okay, they didn't have to turn and then go. Okay,
Sie mussten sich nicht wenden, um gehen zu können.
okay. So what does it mean?
So, was bedeutet das?
Let's go to our notes.
Gehen wir zu den Notizen.
Because also in Ezekiel 1 we read they turned not when they went. Yes?
Also in Ezekiel 1, wir haben gelesen, dass sie wendeten sich nicht, wenn sie gingen.
Let's go now to 1 Kings 13,
Gehen wir zu 1. Könige 13,
verses 7 to 10.
die Versen 7 bis 10.
Speaking about now about the disobedient prophet.
Hier spricht es über den ungehorsamen Prophet.
And the king said unto the man of God, Come home with me, and refresh thyself, and I will give thee a reward. And the man of God said unto the king, If thou wilt give me half thine house, I will not go in with thee, neither will I eat bread nor drink water in this place. For so was it charged me by the word of the Lord, saying, Eat no bread, nor drink water, nor turn again by the same way that thou camest. So he went another way, and returned not by the way that he came to Bethel. So, what didn't he do?
So was tat er nicht?
He didn't turn back, right?
Er wendete sich nicht so.
Okay, so he only went forward.
Er
Okay,
ging nur voran oder vorwärts.
okay. Now let's go to Philippians 3,
Gehen wir zu Philippa 3,
13 to 14.
Verse 13 und 14.
Because Paul, was he a cherub,
Weil Paulus, war er ein Cherub,
spiritually spoken?
geistlich gesprochen?
Yeah, I mean, he overcame, right?
Er ist überwunder,
Stephen had
überwältigt.
the face of a cherub, that's it.
Sagt, Stephanus hat den Angesicht eines Cherubs.
Yeah, and he also says, that Paul also says he had like a face of an angel. So, yes, yeah. Okay.
Paul
So-
said that Stephen had a face
No.
of an angel.
Paul himself said somewhere that
He himself.
he himself was like received by them like an angel or something.
Ah,
like this.
okay. Also Paulus sagt über sich, dass er von sie wie ein Engel angenommen würde. Oder Wörter so ähnlich.
Can't remember where it was, but it doesn't matter. Let's go now to Philippians 3, 13 to 14.
Gehen wir zu Philippa 3, Verse 13 und 14.
It says, Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, and reaching forth unto those things which are before. I press toward the mark for the prize of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. So what didn't he do?
So was tat er nicht?
What did he do and what didn't he do?
Was tat er? Was tat er nicht? Press forward, didn't turn back.
Yeah, he pressed only forward, he didn't turn back. Okay.
Er ging nur vorwärts, er wendete sich nichts um.
Okay. So Now Luke 9, verse 61 to 62.
Lukas 9, Vers 61, 62.
It says, And another also said, Lord, I will follow thee, but let me first go bid them farewell, which are at home at my house. And Jesus said unto him, No man, having put his hand to the plough and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of God. So what is he saying here?
So, was sagt er hier?
Don't go back.
Yeah, same thing, right? Don't turn back.
Dasselbe.
Okay.
Wende dich nicht so.
Remember Lot's wife. Yes?
So, gedenke an die Frau von Lot.
Okay. And it says here, no man having put his hand to the plough.
Es sagt hier niemand, der seine Hand zum Pflug gelegt hat.
Because the man said, let me go back and say goodbye to my father and my mother. Yes?
Der Mann sagte, lass mich Wiedersehen zu meiner Mutter und Vater sagen.
But he says, if you put your hand to the plow and turn back, you're not fit for the kingdom of God.
Er sagt, wenn du deine Hand an den Pflug legst und kehrst dann bist du für das Königreich Gottes nicht tauglich.
Which story where did he take it from?
Und wo nahm er diese Geschichte her?
Ja. Elijah calling Elisha.
So, Elia, der Elisa rief.
So let's go to 1 Kings 19,
So gehen wir zu 1. Könige 19
verse 19.
und Vers 19.
It says, So he departed thence and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him and cast his mantle upon him. So, what was Elisha doing?
So was tat Elisa?
He was plowing. Yeah?
Pflückte.
He put his hand to the plow.
Hat seine Hand an den Pflug gelegt.
Now verse 20.
Vers 20.
And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. So what did Elisha want to do?
So, was wollte Elisa tun?
It's the same.
Same thing as the man in Christ's time, right?
Dasselbe wie der Mensch zur Zeit Christi.
And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? So Elijah basically tells him, okay,
You,
either you now follow me or you return to your parents, okay?
So, Elia sagt, entweder folgst du mich oder gehst zu deinen Eltern zurück.
Okay. And in verse 21,
Vers 21.
And he returned back from him and took a yoke of oxen and slew them and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him. So Elisha made the right choice.
So, Elisa hat den richtigen Wahl getroffen.
So he didn't go back to his parents, but he followed Elijah.
no, he made a sacrifice.
Yes, made
Er
a
ging
sacrifice.
nicht zu seinen Eltern zurück, sondern brachte eine Opfer dar und folgte Elia.
Okay. So
But it's because Elijah passed by him, right? So
yes.
Weil
it's,
Mhm.
Elia ist an ihm vorübergezogen.
it's talking about from the first birth. If you turn back, you're
Yes.
not worthy.
Yeah, he was basically now in this point of decision, whether he was now to surrender to the Lord fully or not. Right?
Er war in diese Tal der Entscheidung, ob er sich nur gänzlich der Herr hingibt oder nicht.
Okay. So now so therefore when the cherubims, when they don't turn, okay,
Die Cherubime, wenn sie sich nicht wenden,
just shows that when you become a cherub, you will not turn back. You always only will go forward. Okay.
das zeigt, dass wenn du ein Cherub geworden bist, du wirst nichts umdrehen oder abwenden, du wirst nur vorangehen.
Like Paul, he said, I only press forward. I'm not looking back anymore. Okay.
Paulus, ich dränge nur nach vorne, also ich kehre mich nicht so.
Forgetting those things that were behind. Okay.
Ich vergesse die Sachen, die hinter mir sind.
And this is also something we need to learn in our lives. That forget your past. Okay.
Das ist, was wir in unserem Leben lernen müssen. Also vergesst deine Vergangenheit.
This was your old life that should not be with you anymore. Okay.
Altes Leben sollte nichts mehr in dein Gepäck sein, sozusagen.
Okay. So now let's go to Ezekiel 1,
Gehen wir jetzt zu Ezekiel 1,
verse 18.
und beginnen Vers 18.
18 to 21.
18 bis 21.
As for their rings, they were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them four. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go. And the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. So what can we see here?
Was können wir hier sehen?
Wherever the cherubims go, the wheels go.
Yeah, wherever the cherubims went, the wheels go, right?
Da, wo die Cherubime gingen, gingen die Räder.
Okay, so what does it remind you of?
Und an was erinnert uns das?
44,000.
Yeah, in this sense, yeah, I mean the 144,000 follow the Lamb whithersoever it goeth, right?
144.000 folgen den Lamm, wo auch immer er geht.
I mean the wheels are not the 144,000,
Die
okay?
Räder sind nicht die
But I think
144.000.
it's showing that they're committed. They're committed to whatever task they're given. They're focused. They can't be separated from what they've been given to do. These,
Mhm.
you know, when he says hold, that's what they're doing. They're not doing anything else. They're holding that.
Also es bezeichnet den Auftrag, den sie gegeben worden sind, also dieser Zusammenhang. Zum Beispiel, wenn der Herr sagt, halte, ist es genau das, was sie tun. Die tun nichts anderes.
See, because it says when those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, right?
Also wenn sie gingen, sie gingen, und wenn sie stehen blieben, blieben sie auch stehen.
It was like in the wilderness when the Lord said, pitch the tents, they were to tarry, but when the cloud moved, the camp was to move.
Es war wie in der Wüste, wenn der Herr sagt, bau den Lager auf, also sie haben ihr Zelten aufgebaut, aber wenn der Wolke bewegte sich, dann sollten sie abbauen und folgen.
Because the pillar of cloud was these brass flags, right? They were to go together. Right?
Yes, yes,
Wolkensäule, das ist wie diese erzenen Füße, die gehen eben zusammen.
yes,
So it's like you can't separate them, really.
Du kannst sie voneinander nicht trennen.
yes. Okay, so let's go now to Exodus 40.
Gehen wir jetzt zur 2. Buch Mose 40,
I didn't see.
Let's read verse 34 to 37.
die Verse 34 bis 37.
It says, Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. Okay, so who was guiding them?
So, wer leitete sie?
Christ, right?
Christus.
This cloud.
Diese
Okay.
Wolke eben.
So now I want to send a picture in the group,
Ich möchte ein Bild in die Gruppe senden.
because that's also an old study we did 2 years ago or so.
Und das ist auch eine alte Studium, die wir vor vielleicht 2 Jahren gemacht haben.
Okay, so I posted the picture in the live stream group.
Also ich habe diese Bild in den Livestream-Gruppe gepostet.
And because in the wilderness wandering, when the cloud moved, yes,
Denn in die Wüstewanderung, als die Wolke sich bewegte,
they were arranged in a certain order. Yes,
sie waren aufgebaut, also das Lager wurde in eine bestimmte Ordnung
yes,
aufgebaut.
like a cross.
Wie ein Kreuz eben.
You all remember this?
Konntet ihr daran
Okay.
erinnern?
So these different tribes. Yes.
Also verschiedene Stämme nach.
Okay. And we made the study that because each tribe had a tribe that represented the camp. Yes.
Und jeder Stamm hat
So sorry, each camp had a tribe that represented the camp.
also jeder Lager hatte einen Stamm, der den Lager darstellte.
Okay, so for instance,
Representative.
how you can see it here in this picture.
Und wie du das hier in diesem Bild sehen kannst.
So in the north was Dan, Asher, Naphtali.
So in den Norden war Dan, Assur und Naphtali.
In the east you had Judah, Issachar and Zebulun.
Und in den Osten hast du Juda, Issachar und Zebulon.
In the south you had Reuben, Simeon and Gad.
Und im Süden hast du Ruben, Simeon und Gad.
And in the west you had Ephraim, Manasseh and Benjamin.
Und zum Westen hast du Ephraim, Manasseh und Benjamin.
So 12 tribes, right?
Die 12 Stämme eben.
Okay. And always the top one was always the representative of the camp.
Und
Okay.
die erste von den jeweiligen Himmelsrichtungen war der Repräsentant von den jeweiligen 4 Lagern.
So, for instance, in the east you had Judah,
Zum Beispiel im Osten hast du Juda.
and Judah is illustrated as the tribe of the line of, the line of Judah, line of the tribe of Judah.
Juda wird genannt der Löwe des Stammes Judas.
Okay, so therefore he was illustrated the line, right?
Also deswegen stellte er der Löwe dar.
Reuben
Ruben
is unstable as water. So remember
der
this
ist
study?
unsicher wie Wasser,
Okay.
instabil wie Wasser.
It's man, right?
Das
It's
ist der
unstable
Mensch.
as water.
Instabil wie Wasser.
Then Ephraim
Dann Ephraim
was likened unto an oxen in the Bible.
war
Okay.
verglichen wie ein Ochs in der Bibel.
Okay, so and then Dan is this judge, right?
Und Dan, dieser Richter.
And can't fully remember why we connected this with the eagle.
Ich kann mich nicht erinnern, wie wir das mit den Adlern verbunden haben.
Do you remember, Brahma? How we connected Dan with the eagle
It's always the judgment that comes
from the north?
Das ist das Gericht, der vom Norden kommt.
Deuteronomy 28.
Und das ist 5. Buch Mose 28, der Adler.
Ah, yes, yes. Okay.
The king of the north comes with a swift eagle.
Yes.
Der König des Nordens kommt zügig wie ein Adler.
Okay, so basically you had the 4 cherubims representing each of these tribes. Okay.
Du hast diese 4 Cherubime, die den jeweiligen Stämmengruppen darstellt.
Okay. So
I think also they say that you can link up these 4 things there to it also, so one of them's the eagle, right? Is that what you?
that's what I just did.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, you're linking it to it, okay, sorry. I'm
So-
reading something, so.
Therefore, when the cloud moved,
So, wenn der Wolke sich bewegte,
who moved then?
wer bewegte sich dann?
The 4 cherubims,
Die
right?
4 Cherubime.
The lion, the man,
Löwe,
the
der
ox,
Mensch.
and the eagle.
Der Ochs
Okay.
und der Adler.
Okay, so that's just an illustration that Christ is the one directing the 4 cherubims.
So, es ist nur eine Darstellung, wie Christus die 4 Cherubime anweist.
So when he went, they went.
So,
Okay,
wenn er ging, gingen sie.
but also in Ezekiel 1 it says that when the cherubims went, the wheels went.
Auch
Okay.
in Hesekiel 1 sagt es, wenn die Cherubime gingen, dann gingen die Rädern auch.
Okay, so that's how we can see how Christ is obviously ultimately the one guiding the affairs of man. Okay,
Und so können wir sehen, dass Christus ist derjenige, der letztendlich die Geschehnissen des Menschen antreibt
but
oder steuert.
the cherubim are the ones that are basically the connecting link between heaven and earth.
Aber
Okay,
die Cherubime sind die verbindende Kette oder Link zwischen Himmel und Erde.
yes.
When Christ, because in Ezekiel, has the glory of the Lord leaving the temple, right, and it goes to the Mount of Olives.
Also in Hesekiel, die Herrlichkeit des Herrn verlässt den Tempel und ging zu Ölberg rüber.
And you have, when Christ leaves the temples, the 12 disciples follow him.
Und wenn Christus den Tempel verlässt, die 12 Jüngern folgen ihm.
So he's illustrating these cherubims in this sense, and the 12 tribes are following him.
So, Christus stellt diese Cherubime in diesem Sinne dar und die 12 Stämme folgen ihm.
No, the 12 tribes are the cherubim, right? He
No,
would
not in
be.
that illustration, because the glory of the Lord is this, is what was in the world. When the glory of the Lord gets up from the temple in Ezekiel 11, I think it
So,
is.
wenn die Herrlichkeit des Herrn vom Tempel wiegt,
No.
Hesekiel 11,
Okay,
glaube ich.
let's go to Ezekiel 11.
So, gehen wir zu Hesekiel 11.
Ezekiel 11 is like Exodus 40.
Hesekiel 11 ist wie 2. Buch Mose 40.
Ezekiel 11, it's the glory of the Lord goes on top of the cherubim and then leaves to the Mount of Olives,
Okay,
right?
but they're all one thing, that's the point I'm making, right?
Yeah.
Christ is the glory, he sits in the throne, but the 4 cherubims, when they leave, right, it's an illustration of Exodus 40, right?
Yes.
So the people were to know that the Lord had left the temple and follow him, right? That's what it illustrates. When it gets up and leaves, you leave with it, right? It's no longer God's house. right? So the point is that when Christ got up, this was illustrating Christ took what he did when he left, says your house is left empty, desolate, went to the Mount of Olives, he took it from Ezekiel 11, right?
Yes. But why is not the glory, the pillar in the cherubims, the disciples?
Christ is playing the role of the...
No, they have no clue at this point. They're not represented the cherubim, they are the 12 disciples.
Yes.
That's the 12 tribes.
The Father is the glory. Christ
So
is the
we're saying in
cherubim.
Exodus 40, when the pillar gets up and leaves, the tribes were to follow.
Yeah, but the tribes are the 4 cherubims. They are the eagle, the man, the calf, and the lion.
Okay, I think that it shows that, okay, maybe in that sense that represents God's people with the Holy Spirit in them. Okay, maybe you're right in that sense, but you get my point. The analogy's the
Yeah,
same.
the analogy is the same. Yes.
Right, I'm just saying the 12 disciples there, when they leave, they would represent the 12 tribes.
Also die 12 Jungen, wenn sie da den Tempel oder Jesus nachfolgen, wenn er den Tempel verlässt, stellen die 12 Stämmen dar.
Yes. Okay, so let's just go to Ezekiel 11,
So gehen wir zu Ezekiel 11.
because there we can see how the cherubims, they take now the glory of the Lord and bring it to the Mount of Olives.
Da können wir sehen, wie die Cherubime das Herrlichkeit des Herrn zum Ölberg nehmen.
Verse 22 to 23.
Verse 22, 23.
It says, Then did the cherubims lift up their wings, and the wheels beside them, and the glory of God, the God of Israel, was over them above. And the glory of the Lord went up from the midst of the city, and stood upon the mountain which is on the east side of the city. Okay, so here we can see they went up, and they now came down on the mountain on the east side of the city, which was
Hier
Mount
können wir
of
sehen,
Olives.
sie gingen auf und kamen zum Osten. Die Stadt ist nieder, was den Ölberg war.
Okay, and the 4 cherubims are illustrated in what shape, according to Numbers 2, what we just looked at?
Die 4 Cherubime werden in welchen Formen dargestellt? So wie im
The cross, right?
4. Buch Mose, was wir eben gelesen haben. Also das Kreuz.
Okay, so therefore the cross moved now from Mount Moriah to the Mount of Olives. Yes?
Also das Kreuz bewegte sich von Berg Moria zum Ölberg hinüber.
Yes?
Amen.
Okay, good. Alright, let's go now back to our notes.
So, gehen wir zu den Notizen zurück.
Let's go to Habakkuk chapter 2.
Gehen wir zu Habakkuk, Kapitel 2.
So it just shows that when you become a cherub, right, you will now go wherever the Lord sends you, but these wheels, they will always be with you, will always linked to the complicated play of human events.
Also wenn du ein Cherub bist, dann gehst du, wo immer der Herr dich führt. Aber diese Räder sind immer mit dir.
So you're always linked to the complicated play of human events.
Du
Okay.
bist immer verbunden mit diesem komplizierten Zusammenspiel von menschlichen Ereignissen.
Now let's go to Habakkuk chapter 2,
Habakkuk, Kapitel 2,
verse 1 and 2.
die Verse 1 und 2.
It says, I will stand upon my watch, and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision, and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Okay, so what is Habakkuk here?
So, was ist Habakkuk hier?
He's a watchman.
He's a watchman.
Er ist ein Wächter.
And when do you become a watchman?
Und wann wirst du ein Wächter?
When you both.
Yeah, when you're born again, right?
Wenn du neu geboren wirst.
So once Ezekiel eats the role, he's now a watchman. Yes?
So, wenn Hesekiel diese Schriftrolle ist, dann ist er ein Wächter.
And what is he commanded to do in verse 2?
Und in Vers 2, was ist er befohlen zu tun?
Write the vision.
Write the vision.
Die
Right?
Vision zu schreiben.
You can only write the vision once you obtain the vision yourself.
Du kannst die Vision nur schreiben, wenn du es einst selbst erhalten hast.
Okay, so therefore the cherubims,
That's what that was what Miller was told to do.
Yes.
He said, "Come and see, and I was inclined to put it on the center
Center table.
table and invite everybody to come and see.
Das ist, was
Yes.
Miller befohlen worden ist zu tun. Sagt, kommt und seht, und der sollte es auf den Tisch ins Zentrum stellen, was eben hier ist. Und jeder eingeladen, um hineinzukommen und es zu sehen.
Okay, so therefore the cherubims, or when you become the church in heaven, you become now a writer, right?
Also, wenn du die Gemeinde im Himmel geworden bist, dann wirst du ein Schriftsteller oder
Ja.
ein Schreiber.
And you write now the vision, right, for
Du
others,
schreibst die Visionen für andere,
that he may run that, read of it.
so
Yes.
dass derjenige rennen kann, der es liest.
So, but the cherubims, what are they therefore here already?
Aber die Cherubime, für was sind sie hier bereits?
Watchmen.
They're writers,
Die
right?
sind Schreiber.
Yeah, they write the vision to you.
Sie
Okay.
schreiben dir die Vision.
Okay, and eventually you fully receive it at the end. Okay.
Und letztendlich erhältst du das vollständig am Ende.
Okay. Now let's go to Revelation 1:17 to 19.
So, Offenbarung 1, die Verse 17 bis 19.
And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead, and he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, Fear not, I'm the first and the last. So where's John now on the line?
So, wo ist Johannes jetzt auf der Linie?
Also here, right?
Er ist auch
So
hier.
he's humbled in the dust, right?
Er ist im Staub gedemütigt.
Now verse 19.
Vers 19.
Write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. So what is he commanded to do now?
So, für was ist er befohlen zu tun hier?
Right.
Zu
Okay.
schreiben.
So when you become a cherub, you're now a writer.
So,
Okay.
wenn du ein Cherub geworden bist, bist du ein Schreiber.
And an angel or a cherub, what is it?
Und ein Engel oder ein Cherub, was ist das?
It's a messenger.
Ein
Okay.
Bote, ein Botschafter.
Okay. So now let me just post another picture.
So, jetzt ein weiteres Bild schicke ich.
This is now the front cover of the King James Bible
Das ist der,
of the 1611 version.
also der 1611 Version von der König James Bibel, also der Einleitungsbild.
And I hope that you can. That it's big enough. Yeah. Okay. So when you open it,
Also wenn du das öffnest,
you have many different Bible characters here depicted. Okay.
es gibt viele verschiedene Bibelcharaktere, die hier dargestellt sind.
Okay. And when you go up here to the top left corner,
Und wenn du zu den oberst linken Ecke gehst,
you have somebody with a pen, if you can see it. Okay.
jemand mit einem Stift, wenn du
Ja.
das sehen
Pen
kannst.
and a book. Okay.
So ein Stift und ein Buch.
And obviously there's also an official explanation who this is meant to be. Okay.
Es gibt eine offizielle Erklärung, wer das sein sollte.
So this should be Matthew.
Das
Okay.
sollte Matthäus sein.
Yes. So the one on the left side is Matthew.
Also der auf der linken Seite ist Matthäus
On the right side with a book in the pen is Mark.
und auf der rechten Seite mit diesem Buch und diesem Schreibwerkzeug ist Markus.
And on the bottom right corner,
Und in den unterrechten Ecke
this is somebody also with a pen in a book, right?
ist jemand auch da mit einem Kugelschreiber und einem Buch.
That is Luke.
Und das ist Lukas.
And then on the left side it's John.
Und dann auf der linken Seite ist es Johannes.
Okay, everybody sees them?
Kann jeder das sehen?
Okay. But when you also look closely,
Aber wenn du ganz nah schaust,
they are linked with the 4 cherubims. Okay.
die sind verbunden mit den 4 Cherubim.
Okay, because next to Matthew there's like a cherub. Okay.
Denn neben Matthäus, es gibt auch einen Cherub.
And next to Mark on the top right there's a lion.
Und
Okay.
neben Markus oben rechts gibt es eine Löwe.
Then next to Luke in the bottom right is an ox.
Neben Lukas unten rechts ist ein Ochse.
And next to John there's this eagle on the
Und
bottom right.
neben Johannes gibt es diese Adler unten rechts.
Yes, everybody sees this.
Kann jeder
Okay.
das sehen?
You don't see any of them, or
You only a lion we see.
and then
4 corners, look down.
just next to the
So don't
right.
it?
Yes.
There's the other 2, look at the corners.
Cannot see it?
No, I can see it,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I've seen it, I can see it.
You see it? There, and then the right one.
That was the ox.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Because when Matthew, Mark, Luke and John wrote their Gospels, what were they?
Als Matthäus, Markus, Lukas und Johannes ihre Evangelium schrieben,
For cherubim.
There were 4 cherubims, right?
4 Cherubim.
Write the vision and make it
So,
plain upon tables.
schreibe
Yes?
die Vision und macht es klar auf Tafeln.
Okay. However,
Dennoch,
the King James people back then, they were probably not right how they joined the beasts or the living creatures to the 4 Gospels. Okay.
also die Menschen, die die Bibel damals schrieben, sie waren wahrscheinlich nicht richtig, wie sie diese 4 Tiere den 4 Evangelien zusammen bindeten.
I mean, not the man that wrote the Bible, but the man that made the title page of this King James Bible.
Also der Mensch, der diesen Bild gemacht hat.
Because he took it from ancient Catholic theologians. Okay.
Er hat das von historische katholische Theologen genommen,
It's taken from Jerome, for instance. Okay.
von Jerome zum Beispiel.
Okay. So, but the pioneers, they also write about it.
Aber die Pioniere, die schreiben auch darüber.
Because in Christianity it was already a long time understood that the 4 cherubims are linked to the 4 Gospels. Okay.
In dem Christentum ist wurde lange Zeit gewusst oder verstanden, dass die 4 Cherubime in Verbindung mit den 4 Evangelien gebracht wurden.
Only how to really join which of these to which gospel was disputed. Okay.
Aber welche von diesen welche Evangelium zu binden, das war immer kontrovers.
But I believe that Haskell, our pioneer, has it right. Okay.
Ich glaube, dass Stephen Haskell, unser Pionier, hat den richtigen Ansicht.
But obviously we also need to test and prove this.
Aber
Okay.
natürlich, wir
Further
müssen das
witnesses.
auch testen und prüfen.
Okay. So now let's go to this quote by Stephen Haskell.
So gehen wir zu diesem nächsten Zitat in den Notizen von Stephen Haskell.
It says, the heading, the 4 cherubims equals the 4 gospels.
Also unter den Überschrift, die 4 Cherubime sind gleich die 4 Evangelien.
It says, these 4 living creatures represent 4 faces of the character of God. The first was like a lion, the second like a calf.